Dan Wolf.
And I'm Laura Lee. Thanks for joining us. To understand the war happening in the Middle East today is to understand decades of conflict.
Which is why our Northern News Now's Cara Kopp sat down with UMD Professor Jeremy Yude, who specializes in international relations.
This is not something we can really distill into 15-second sound bites. We need to recognize the complexity of the situation.
Complexities that Professor Yude says follows decades of conflict and violence.
In these last, say, 15 to 20 years, things have really ramped up, especially with Hamas being in charge of the government in the Gaza Strip.
The Gaza Strip is roughly 140 square miles of land.
Fundamentally, you've got two different groups that both say that this is part of their homeland.
Although small, it holds a massive historical and religious significance to both the Israeli and Palestinian governments. But even with all that history, Yude says the latest violence caught him by surprise.
And we started to see just the scope of attack that was happening. It really sent a signal like, oh, this is something fundamentally different here.
Especially as border restrictions for those living in the Gaza Strip tighten.
It's very hard for people to go back and forth. And so you have seen descriptions where they call it, essentially an open-air prison.
Yude saying this is raising humanitarian issues, especially following the Israeli government's declaration of war on the Hamas.
Part of the problem is what is the robustness of the international legal system to address these sorts of war crimes or crimes against humanity.
Yude believes no matter if the war comes to an end soon or distant future, some sort of conflict is likely to continue for generations. In Duluth, Cara Kopp, Northern News Now.